Great night. Wow. I'm always blown away by seeing the friendly faces that are here and attending these types of events. You know, what a beautiful night here in Minnesota. I'm sure all of us have other places that we could be, other things that we could be doing. But wow, you know, you're here and we're here as a community. We're here to recognize the International Overdose Awareness Day. And we're here to recognize those that have lost loved ones. Fentanyl poisoning. That's what United Way of Hastings has been focusing on over the last year. And it virtually started by a local mom reaching out to us. Her name is Bridget Noring. And she needed help. She wanted to bring awareness to the community. So we sat down with her and we first had to learn what fentanyl poisoning was. I always say this, I was embarrassed that I didn't know more about it. We work a lot at United Way of Hastings with the youth in our community. We work a lot with other community groups. We work a lot with law enforcement. But I didn't know what it was. And now that I do, I'm telling everyone this is a crisis. Fentanyl poisoning is a crisis. And if you're not aware of it, it's probably because you just don't know that it's going on like we were. I've talked to many United Ways throughout the state of Minnesota. I've asked them, you know, how many overdoses are in your community? And what's fentanyl poisoning going on, what's going on in your community? And many of them say, oh, we don't have that going on. But actually they do once they look into the data. Minnesota, 3 lives a day lost to fentanyl poisoning. For those of you that follow numbers, it's not too hard to find all the stats that are out there and why this is a crisis. So thank you all for coming. We want to be respectful of everyone's time, so we'll try to keep everything moving along real closely, real smoothly and briefly. We have several speakers that are going to talk and give you information about what they're seeing and their experiences with fentanyl poisoning. I also want to thank Alina Clinic, who has sponsored several awareness events in Hastings around this topic. I want to thank the Confluence that has allowed us to be here tonight, and they will be lighting up the cupolas across the street, the purple color for International Awareness Day for Overdoses. And thank you all for being here. I'm going to next announce our first speaker, who is Mayor Mary Fassbender. Mayor?
Thanks, Mary. Thank you. Bug attack. Thank you, as Mary said, for being here tonight. As she stated, we're here to bring awareness about illicit fentanyl, which many people in our community have passed away way too early. I will be reading a proclamation that the city of Hastings is honoring this day, August 30th, 2022, as Opioid Awareness Day. If you are here and I call your name, please come up. I'd like your family to represent your last person in your family for fentanyl overdose. Devin Noring, Haley and Caden Noring will represent Devin. Michelle Cahill, Ashley Thoner, Natalia Iraguin, Bella, Grace, and Jesse. Tyler Kavitz, Becky Maloney, Jose Reedy, Brenda Ellis Reedy, Kyle Hamilton, Dan Hamilton, Zalea Ebanks, Bree and Josh Gretz, Cruz Topper. Also, if there is anyone else in the audience that has lost a loved one to illicit fentanyl, please step forward. International Overdose Awareness Day, August 30th, 2022. Whereas the City of Hastings will recognize International Overdose Awareness Day, IOAD, on August 30th, 2022, to raise awareness of drug overdoses and poisonings, especially involving opioids, and reduce the stigma of drug-related deaths, and thereby bring awareness to the problem of opioid addiction. And whereas overdoses can occur in people who have an addiction to substances as well as those who do not, such as someone accidentally overdosing on prescription opioids after a surgery or an injury, an elderly person consuming too much of a prescribed pain reliever, a teenager experimenting with illegal and street drugs for the first time, or a child ingesting opioid pills or powder from a home medicine cabinet or other storage location. And whereas, as in many communities throughout the country, the national opioid epidemic poses a significant threat to public health and safety in Hastings. Overdoses and poisonings related to opioids are affecting more family members, neighbors, and friends than ever before. City staff such as police, fire, and EMTs and the community partners like the United Way of Hastings, businesses, health organizations, and faith communities are working to address this growing crisis. And whereas opioids are a class of highly addictive drugs used to reduce pain and include prescription opioids like oxycodone and hydrocodone, as well as illegal opioids like fentanyl, cafentanil, and heroin. And therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Mary Fassbender of the City of Hastings, do hereby declare August 30th, 2022 International Opioid Awareness Day in Hastings.
Thank you, families. Thank you so much for being here. I can't imagine. Just know that our thoughts are with you, and help us build awareness. That's what our main goal is here in our community. We want to pass that along to other communities throughout the state. We all need to know more about this. We need to know more about it in our families, schools, employers. So thank you for being here. And thank you, Mayor. Next, we want to have someone from the city talk again, and this would be Hastings Police Chief Dave Wilski. He will say a few words about what we're seeing right here in the city of Hastings. He's our new police chief, and we're lucky to have him. So, Chief Wilski.
Thank you, Mary. As Mary stated, my name is Dave Wilski. I'm the police chief for the city of Hastings, and I appreciate the invite to be here. Fentanyl and illicit drugs, we all have to deal with it. And on a personal level, I'm free to share that my cousin dealt with this issue his entire life. And he was found in a parking lot in Minneapolis this spring, and he overdosed. So it's personal to everyone, and our officers see this every week as they're going through these overdoses. It affects them. I started with Hastings in 2017, became part of their family and part of the community. We often hear the word fentanyl being thrown out there, but a lot of us aren't really sure what that really means. What is fentanyl? It's a tasteless, odorless substance. It's too small to see with the naked eye. 2 pieces the size of salt is enough to be fatal. Really, the assumption should be, if you didn't get the prescription from a drugstore and you don't know what's in it, assume that fentanyl is in it. They are putting it in so many substances these days that I don't even know all of them that are out there. But I'm sure Commander Hermerding will talk about that. So make no mistake, Hastings, Minnesota has illegal fentanyl and other opioids in our homes. Some statistics just to make you aware. In 2021, we responded to 109 overdoses just in the city of Hastings within our police department. Those were not all necessarily fentanyl, because sometimes we just really don't know. This year to date, we have 40 reported overdoses and 1 death that's been attributed to fentanyl. So it is in Hastings. Our officers have administered Narcan 7 times, and in 6 cases, separate from those 7, a family member or somebody on scene administered Narcan. So when we talk about how somebody is acquiring these drugs, really, when we're talking about our youth, the social media is not our friend. And the reason I say that, it's a form of communication where people can hide. They can have aliases, they can create different Snapchats or all these different social media outlets, and they're very hard to track. They work in code sometimes, so it's hard to really pay attention to what's going on. The key is to reduce the demand of these drugs and determine why our youth are looking for unhealthy outlets for drugs and fentanyl. When we talk about the Good Samaritan law, which often people hear about, Minnesota does provide immunity from prosecution as long as the person calls 911 for assistance for themselves or another, and that they stay on scene and fully cooperate with the authorities. So what can we really do to combat fentanyl and illegal drugs in our community? Well, as a parent, we have to be calm. We have to talk to our kids in a calm, safe setting. We have to give them the opportunity to open up when they're ready to open up. Be understanding. Stand by their side. Don't be afraid to look in their rooms, look in their backpacks, look through their phones. I know it's uncomfortable and they're going to fight you on it, but the alternative could be deadly. For citizens, call 911 when you see illegal or perceived illegal activity that's taking place in our neighborhoods. Have conversations with friends and family. We need to get the word out there. The majority of people here understand the risks of illegal drugs and fentanyl. We need to get the word out there to people that have never heard of it before. Be a voice of reason. Help if you see somebody overdosing. Just by calling 911, doing the bare minimum, be by their side until EMTs, law enforcement can get there, administer Narcan, and attempt to save their life. And when we talk about Narcan, that's not necessarily going to save someone's life. We have a very high success rate, but we do have people that overdose to the point where they pass, even with Narcan. There may be times when you're concerned about reporting because you want to be anonymous, and we do have a platform in place. The Hastings Police Department has Tip 411. We've had it for many years, and this is anonymous reporting. It doesn't replace 911, so you have to keep that in mind, because we often get tip 411s, and that comes through via email. We don't monitor that 24 hours a day. Our supervisors are checking it, our administrators are checking that, but if it's time of the essence, you have to call 911, and we see that on a daily basis when we respond to tip 411 complaints or concerns, and let them know that they have to call 911 in the future. If you use tip 411, you want to text the word Hastings to 847-411. Give us as much information as you can. Vehicle license plate, vehicle descriptions if vehicles are involved, and also descriptions of people and what the activity is. And I'd also like to thank the United Way of Hastings for their diligence in getting the word out about fentanyl and the opioid crisis that we're dealing with here in our community. Remember, we're all in this together, and we can all make a difference to save lives. So thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you so much, Chief. Appreciate that. And next on the docket here is Hastings Fire Chief John Townsend. We'll say a few words because we know when we call 911, EMTs, fire department, typically first on the scene. Chief?
Hi, thank you. My name is John Townsend. I'm the fire chief. And they asked me to talk about this. I initially wasn't super sure what I was going to add to the many other speakers that have a lot of information on this topic. And they asked me just to really focus on how it affects Hastings Fire and EMS. So to give you kind of some ideas of how it affects us, in 2021, we responded to 139 overdose calls. In 2020, we went to 122 of those calls, which is 261 overdose calls in the last 2 years. Now for us, when we leave the station in the ambulance, we get these calls as an overdose. They could be an opioid overdose, or they could be an overdose on many things. So I looked into that numbers and the data a little bit more, and what I found was that basically, of those calls, we have given Narcan 77 times in the last 2 years. So when we give Narcan, our numbers are probably a little bit skewed because many times a bystander or the police have already given that medication. So many of the times we give the medication, it is essentially in a situation where people have taken enough of an opioid that initial round of fentanyl, or excuse me, Narcan, wears off. It has a fairly short shelf life once it's been given. It's about 30 to 45 minutes. So if we end up transporting a person up to St. Paul, to one of those hospitals, many times that medication does wear off. So as Chief Wilski pointed out, it isn't a perfect medication and it doesn't save everybody. But what it essentially does is it stops the opioid overdose. It's an antagonist medication for those of you who are in the medical type of things, but essentially it stops that reaction. And what's most important about opioids and overdose is what they really do, and what is the most harmful thing is they suppress a respiratory drive. So when a respiratory drive slows down so much, we quit breathing and we don't get oxygen. So that's essentially what fentanyl and other opioids are doing, whether it's fentanyl or a prescription medication or heroin. They just bring that respiratory drive down to pretty much nothing. So when our staff get there, they get that call and they arrive on scene. Our staff's main focus right out of the gate is really working on breathing. So many times our staff will even start with a bag valve mask, which is a device we use to provide breaths and oxygen, just to start breathing for that patient while they're administering Narcan. So it's really important to understand that what we do is a little bit different. Our staff are very highly trained in managing the airway. They're very highly trained in managing breathing problems and someone who's not breathing. So it's really important to understand kind of how that medicine works. And once we do get that patient, if we are successful with getting the respiratory drive going and stopping the effects of the opioid, on the way to the hospital, it's really important that we do get these people to the hospital. There are times when people are able to get Narcan, they use it, and they feel like they've reversed the effects of the opioid overdose. Well, what we just learned about that short-term version is these folks might not be okay. They might be okay in the moment, but an ambulance still needs to be called, and they still do need to go to the hospital to get that supportive care to make sure that they continue on and make sure that their system is ready to be breathing on their own. So we don't want all of those patients to go to the hospital. Right now, Narcan in our community, we can find it just about anywhere. Any of our pharmacies carry Narcan. Also, there are other agencies. And I also found today, which was interesting, I haven't been on the website before, but the Minnesota State Department of Health has a wonderful website with an amazing amount of information, including a Narcan finder, which I clicked on, and every pharmacy in the city of Hastings does have that, along with some recovery centers and also some syringe service centers. So please look at that if you haven't looked at it. It is an amazing website, and I was pretty excited to see it. With that, I don't have a lot more to add to what Chief Wilski said, and certainly appreciate having me out today to speak with you and participate in this important event. And I absolutely thank all of you for your interest in this really important topic and the crisis that's going on around it.
Thank you, Chief. As Chief mentioned, we do have some booths here, a recovery center here that does have Narcan. Feel free to take a look at the booths that are here. I think I have actually a listing of who all is here. Of course, the Hastings Police Department, Dakota County Drug Task Force, Rise Up Recovery, Alina Clinic. We have Families Fighting Fentanyl, Dakota County Public Health, Kathy Keena, Dakota County Attorney, the DEA. Very pleased to have them down from Minneapolis. So please feel free to visit the tables, and they will be sticking around a little bit after we conclude. So next, I want to introduce Brian Hermerding. He's the commander of the Dakota County Drug Task Force. Brian?
Thank you very much. I'll be brief, hopefully. My name is Brian Hermerding. I'm a captain with the Sheriff's Office, and I'm currently assigned as our commander to the Dakota County Drug Task Force. Been doing that for about a year and a half now. And basically what the Dakota County Drug Task Force is, it's a violent crime enforcement team funded by the state to go after drugs, gang members, and guns, and violent criminals. So that's kind of what we do all day long. We have 13 agents from every city, most of the cities in Dakota County, that are assigned up at the task force, and we basically spend our days working long-term drug investigations, long-term gun investigations, and violent criminals, and some fugitive apprehension stuff too. So just for a couple of stats that I thought were interesting for today, and I just recently looked these up. In 2021, an average of 4 Minnesotans died each day from a drug overdose, with the total number of overdose deaths increasing 22% from the previous year, which basically means for every one overdose death, there were 10 non-fatal drug overdoses. So far in 2022, the Dakota County Drug Task Force we're closing in on 100,000 pills seized so far this year. And if you put that in perspective, that's more than the last 4 years combined. And we're closing in, we have 93,000 pills seized so far this year. And we're proud of that number just because we look at that as 93,000 potential lives saved from a potential overdose. Also, interestingly enough, we've seized more powdered fentanyl in 2022 than in the past 4 years combined. And we are seeing it now in basically everything. We've seen it in cocaine, pure fentanyl, we've seen it in meth, and we've seen it in different colors. We've seen some red meth, we see some purple meth, and we see some blue meth, and almost kind of looks like the stuff that you see inside pixie sticks. And then, of course, with the seizure of drugs come firearms. And again, with the way the world is, our firearm seizures this year in 2022 are going to be more than in years past. We don't have the numbers yet on that, but you know what we're seeing with the increase in fentanyl overdoses come the increase in violent crime, the increase in gun-related crime, and it kind of all goes hand in hand. As far as where it's coming from, and I'm sure the DEA folks back there connect with this, but we're very rarely seizing legitimate prescription anymore. All the pills that we're seizing are fake, counterfeit fentanyl pills, and they're typically, we're buying most of our pills directly from drug cartels in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And and when I was thinking back, I couldn't remember a time when we haven't bought drugs or particularly pills from non-cartel members. It just kind of shows you that the issues that we're dealing with. Snapchat, the chief mentioned it earlier. The issues with phones, and I've said this before. I think I said this last year too. I would like to echo it. It's important to know what your kids are doing on Snapchat. It's important to know what apps they have on their phone, how much time they're spending on those apps. We're seeing stuff sold in Snapchat, Facebook Messenger, Signal, WhatsApp. A lot of these drug deals are being done via Cash App, so sometimes they're not even money exchanged. So keep an eye on what your kids are, who they're talking to, and what they're looking at on Facebook and on their phones. I think that's probably the most important thing that I can say really today is you're going to have to elbow your way into their lives a little bit and figure out who they're talking with and what they're talking about. And one last thing I'd like to leave you all with is, as a task force, we're not going to stop going after these folks that sell these legal drugs, and any tip that you can have or that you give us or your local police department. The chief talked about the 411 tip line. That's hugely important. Crime Stoppers is another big one for us. The sheriff's office has a tip line on their website. There's no tip that's too small that we're not going to investigate. If Johnny says, Mom, Billy is selling pills on Snapchat, don't just shrug that off. Say, Johnny, what are you talking about? Tell me more about it, and then report that to us, because we can do some things with that. And it may seem small and not important to you on their surface, but to us, we can make a long-term investigation out of it and hopefully keep somebody from overdosing. And that's kind of the major point I wanted to make here today. Again, thank you, United Way, for having us out again. I'd like to thank the DEA too. They're in the back, kind of hiding back there. Go back there with questions. They're a huge partner for us, and they do absolutely fantastic work, and we really couldn't do what we do without them. So, again, thank you.
Commander, one question. I don't know that you mentioned much about marijuana. What are we seeing with the weed, pot, marijuana? Because a lot of people feel like, just going to smoke a joint and not a big deal. It's not in marijuana.
Yeah, it's interesting. Kind of a hot button political point. I'm not a fan of legalization of marijuana. I believe it leads to other things, other drugs. So, as far as what we're seeing with fentanyl and marijuana, we're not seeing it. Although I have heard that it has been mixed with marijuana and fentanyl across the country. We haven't seen any of that in Dakota County yet. I could do a whole thing on the legalization of marijuana, but it's a long story.
Well, your point is we haven't seen it in Dakota County yet. And I think that's the biggest thing is it's out there. And it's just a matter of time. I've learned a lot from you, Commander, just in terms of how does the fentanyl get here? Where is it coming from? And who's manufacturing it? And all of that. Maybe you could say just a couple words about that, too.
Yeah, and this is be a good discussion to have back with our DEA folks, too. But, most if not all, is coming up from Mexico. A lot of the components get shipped to Mexico via China, and it gets... They literally have huge factories down there and labs that will produce these drugs, and then they get smuggled up into the United States. So that's kind of a majority of where it's coming from and how it's getting here. And it feels like there's no end in sight, but I think, with a lot of hard work, I think we're at least putting a dent in some of that.
Well, that's a really big point. A lot of hard work. We really need to give our law enforcement, Chief Townsend, all of you really a round of applause right now, because they're out there every day risking their lives to be there for us and to save lives. So thank you so much for all that you do for us to keep us safe. Now I'd like to introduce Justin Thomas. His title that he told us to use is Addictions Counselor from Alina Health, but Honestly, just in the last year that I've gotten to know Justin, he's much more than that, and just a wonderful individual, just a wealth of knowledge about addiction and a lot of things that go along with that. So Justin.
Thanks, Mary. It is possible to be human again. I know the fear, I know the bargaining, and I know the desire to escape, the desire to want to escape having to face this world, this scary world every day, and wanting to escape through reaching for substances. I know what it's like to be in that quicksand, reaching for intoxicants, kind of in that fog, and trying to blend in with all the humans in the civilization that show up to work every day. And I'm barely able to show up on time or early. Who shows up early? And so I just want to mostly like educate people, give people hope that my job is to sort of teach people how to be human again. And at the beginning, it's going to be really uncomfortable. It's going to be an adjustment. I think one of the reasons a lot of people are dying is because they don't know what their tolerance is to opioids, and they're information poor about the potency of a lot of these pills. And more importantly, they don't know that you can experience this wonderful lightness of existing in this world with your dignity when you don't have the substances in your body, when it's not in the equation in your brain. I lost a member of my really small recovery social support group last week, actually, to fentanyl overdose. And so our community's grieving as well with yours, and we understand. And we don't know what to do about it because it's terrifying. And it fills my heart to see people showing up in early recovery, and they just keep trying to start a foundation of healthy behavior. And one of the things I also want to talk about is the community of parents and educational, just everyone that's involved in the education in this community. We don't have to resign to the belief that substance use and intoxicant use in the developing bodies and brains in our community is inevitable. And so kind of giving up and believing that they're going to inevitably use substances is part of the problem. I think, we could aspire to be more ambitious with that. And to talk about cannabis, even something like cannabis, in the addiction counseling field, the professional field, in prevention, we like to talk about total abstinence in the developing brain from even so much as cannabis, because studies do show cannabis decreases ambition. It requires you to keep using the cannabis to stimulate the novelty effect receptors in the brain. So, wow, that's Hastings Bridge. That is an interesting object on the skyline of Hastings. Your brain can't do that for a while once you use cannabis every day, because it starts to rely on cannabis to do that for the brain, and then that part of the brain gets lazy. The brain's amazing at adapting. It'll adapt its receptors to whatever you put into it. So daily alcohol use. Alcohol kind of calms you down. It stimulates those receptors that are calming. So if you use daily, if you drink heavily every day like I did, stopping can kill you. It's absolutely terrifying because your brain starts to go into overdrive. I've been through that hell that people are in every day in this community. The hell of, I'm going to run out of drugs, I'm going to run out of alcohol, what am I going to do when I run out? It's absolutely terrifying. It's so uncomfortable to go through withdrawals. And I talk to people in in the irritable restlessness and the anxiety and the nausea of withdrawal every day in the hospital, and I help get them into different treatment centers. So please come to my resource table. We can talk about places that you could send your loved ones or a number that you can call to help just with really anything relating to addiction. Yeah, I'm not sure what else I was going to say, but it's really lovely to live a human life today. I'm still trying to be normal. Maybe I'm passing as a human now today. It's lovely to just kind of start to be able to build the skills and get everything together that was a complete mess because of addiction. And it can be done, and it's wonderful once you build that foundation. It might be an uncomfortable year or two getting that momentum, but I want to give you hope. Anyone who's struggling with substances or have loved ones, it's incredible, and it's lovely to see people in this community building foundations that help people with housing and other resources. So definitely take advantage of all the flyers and cards you can get at this awesome event. And Mari, thank you for bringing us all together. You're doing amazing work here. This is just a wonderful evening, and we've been blessed with this great weather, so it's good to be here. Thanks.
Next, we're going to have Jean Mueller-Boosted, who's my right hand with Helping Kids Succeed. She manages that initiative for United Way of Hastings. She works with the youth in the community, and she's going to talk a little bit about the web of support. Jane?
Thank you. Good evening. One of the things we wanted to do with this evening is make sure we were focusing on education and resources and help and hope. So I wanted to tell you just a little bit about our Helping Kids Succeed initiative, which has been going on for over 8 years. That got started as a result of teen tragedies in 2012. Some of you would be familiar with that. And out of that came a group of concerned citizens and organizations here in Hastings starting the Helping Kids Succeed initiative. And since then, United Way has kept that going. We are now able to work with counselors and teachers in our local schools. I'm pointing to Charlie over here, and I'm pointing to Mark over here, because those are two of the people that made that happen. And we're very, very thankful for that. Just wanted to give you kind of like a 30-second overview. We do have copies of our Helping Kids Succeed handbook over on the table, and we have plenty more. So if we run out, I can easily get you one. This handbook talks about our model, which we use the colors of the spectrum to represent 7 parts of the model. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. And the first color, red, is what we teach kids if we don't have much time with them. The piece that we want to get through to them is that red is the rule of, anybody been in class, you remember? 5. Thank you, Walter. Red is the rule of 5. And what research has shown, particularly from Search Institute here in Minneapolis, young people who have 5 or more trusted, caring adults in their web of support do better on every measure of success. They do better in school. They take less risks. They bully less. If they happen to be bullied, they handle it better. Really, the rule of 5 is kind of like our magic potion. And so we work with a team of young people to help teach that message and to help share that message. Of course, that team kind of got blown up during COVID along with everything else. So this summer, I've been working with a group of young people from the high school, several of whom are here tonight, and they've been working on communications and marketing materials to spread awareness about fentanyl and opioids, and then to also talk about how to build a healthy web of support. And so please visit our table over there. One of them I'm going to introduce here in a second here. Alexa's going to talk to you a little bit about from her perspective as a high school student. We've had these 9-10 students that we've been working with all summer, and listening to them and working with them is amazing. They are incredible young people, so they give me a lot of hope. And hopefully I can be an anchor to some of them. So those of you in the audience that you're thinking about this, if you are a parent, a grandparent, a teacher, a coach, an aunt or uncle, a concerned neighbor, a friend, a family friend, you can be an anchor. That's the biggest challenge I think we have in our culture right now. We're kind of letting our young people go off and, fly on their own when they really need our love and support. and they really need us to be present in their lives. And so being a trusted, caring adult, wanting what's best for them, believing in them, encouraging them, believing they can do more than they think they can do, right? You're thinking of a great teacher you had, or a parent or a grandparent that was that anchor for you. We as adults, we have to step up. We have to be present for them. We have to put our phones down, get involved, have conversations, go fishing, knit, cook, right? We're not talking anything crazy here. It's being present in the lives of our young people. So that's just our quick 30-second overview. Check out our handbook. But really being anchors, being a good anchor and having anchors, probably one of the biggest keys to success when it comes to helping people stay away from substances. So there we go. Yeah, thank you. And now I want to introduce one of our summer camp attendees. CAMP stood for Communications and Marketing Program. Alexa Loritz is a student at Hastings High School and one of our campers. And she and the rest of the team did a great job. So happy to introduce you.
Thank you, Jane. So I wrote this speech for all the teenagers out there, if anyone's here, just listen in. Teenage years, the turning point, that awkward time between kid and adult, the time where your whole world changes around you. The floor falls out from beneath you, and before you know it, you're buying gas and working a job. Before you know it, adults are asking what your major is or what your top colleges are. This is an uncertain time for everyone. However, it can be exponentially more so without a sturdy web like Jane discussed. Those who don't have that loving mother willing to give advice or the money to drive to school or, God forbid, a roof over their heads, this can make life seem so impossible that there's just nothing to look forward to anymore. You reach a state of mind where only one thing can trick you into thinking everything is okay. So you take your first pill. Then you take another one and then another one until you discover the unsettling truth that the one thing your brain tells you is saving your life may very well end it. That is the threat we face today. The tempting voice in the back of your head that says, just one more. It's always been there. Before, it was just never a matter of life or death. Now, I'm not here to restate the problem. I'm here to illustrate it in a way that shows you it is possible to overcome. Your brain can trick you into thinking anything. However, you can never let it trick you into thinking you're alone. You may not see it at first, but there are tons of people out there who recognize what you're going through and want to help fix it. If you don't believe me, just look at all those gathered here today. In addition, you can be that person to help make a difference in someone else's life. It doesn't have to be much at all. Just a simple smile or friendly face will do. You could also join a local club or a support group. It may not seem like much at first, but you are making a difference every time you walk into a meeting or gathering. Take me, for example. I was sitting in third hour Spanish when an envelope dropped on my desk in front of me about some summer program, and now my voice is being heard by a whole community. So join that club. Talk to that struggling friend. Counter the tempting voice in the back of your head and use your voice to be the difference you want to see in your life, your community, and maybe even the whole world. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bridget Noring. Tonight I'm going to introduce our next guest. I had the honor and privilege of meeting him at our APAL rally in June. And when we were trying to put together our speakers tonight, I reached out to Bree, who lost her daughter, Zalea, 17, from Stillwater, and I asked, hey, can Cruz, would he be up for coming and talking to us? Because when we met him at the APAL rally, he spoke about his journey of losing friends, loved ones, and then his journey of recovery. And so when we were talking back and forth, I said to Jane, I really want him to speak because I want him to speak to the parents, but more importantly to our youth. So I'm going to turn it over to Cruz Topper from Stillwater.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Cruz. So I had a great friend. Her name was Zalea, and she was, this beautiful person. She had a big heart. She cared about everybody, and she would always try to help. She's always trying to help people. That's what, I liked about her. She would always try to help you, even if it didn't help herself, or even if, she had to take a loss for it, she would help you. And when I, found out that I lost her to, this this drug, it destroyed me. It put, you know, like, I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. It put a toll on my life. It slowed down me moving forward and getting to, you know, get things and go places and, you know, experience certain things in life. I went down a bad hole, and I went, and I'm sorry. I went down a really bad path, and it was that really caused it. And I, you know, sometimes I look back and I go, you know, why did you do that? Why did you, you know, go down the same path that all these people are going down, and they're losing their lives over this, and you're going down the same path? And it changed everything. I ended up losing time away from my family members, away from my community, and helping people out. I lost it all. And, you know, over the last year, I've had to build it back up with, you know, trust, with family, with other, like, people, friends, the community, you know, and even with, you know, grandparents and stuff. You know, they hear about this, and it's like, it's a bad epidemic, and sorry, and it's just, it's a bad drug, and I don't. I'm sorry. I'll get back on track. Pretty much, I just went down a really bad path this last year. I had to pick myself up, and I had to get to, you know, where I'm at right now. I'm doing very well. I'm still, you know, pushing a few kinks, but I'm getting there. And I just like you guys all to know that there's still hope. You can make it out of the struggle. You don't have to be stuck in, you know, this deep rut where you know you're using and you can't get the thought out of your head is like, when am I going to get my next fix or anything? There is hope. There is hope.
You want me to say? Do I need to introduce myself? I can introduce myself.
I'll introduce you.
Oh, all right.
Gosh, Cruz, thank you. And Alexa, thank you so much. I mean, Cruz, you're 17. Alexa? 15. Wow. As a teenager, I know I could not have gotten up and shared with their composure and emotional. You know what? Show your emotion. We need to make it real. And wow, these young people. And so, you know, we have some really good ambassadors here for us to pass that message along to all their friends and everyone in the community. So next, Bridget Noring is going to talk a little bit about how fentanyl poisoning has impacted her family. I'm very pleased to be wearing a button tonight. Jane is also wearing one that Bridget gave us, and it's her son Devin, and the button is his football picture, Hastings Raiders. For those of you that know Hastings, have been in Hastings, you know that football is a big thing. Todd Field's right up the street. We have our home opener in 2 nights. And I wear this button. That was me a few years back with our sons playing football. And Devin's picture is on here, but it definitely could have been one of our sons. So, Bridget?
Thank you. I just want to thank everybody again for coming out tonight. Thank you, Mayor Mary. Big shout out to the United Way again for hosting our 2nd year. Definitely law enforcement. I see a lot just because I'm always in law enforcement's face now. Like, hey, this is happening in our town. April 4th, 2020, I lost my son, Tom, Haley, Caden. We lost Devin. He was 19. Couldn't understand what had happened to him. The night before, he was bubbly, he was laughing, he was happy. He was just typical Devin. So it came as a shock when his little brother found him the next day unresponsive in his room. So I'm not going to go over all the stuff of Snapchat. Snapchat will always be a thorn in my side. And I'm not going to back off of Snapchat ever. Ever, ever. It was through Snapchat that we found out how Devin had died from a fake pill that he and his friend believed was a Percocet. It turned out to be 100% pure fentanyl. enough to kill multiple people. It was also through Snapchat that we found out Devin's last moments. And it's kind of messed up when you get those messages. So I reached out to Commander Hermodine the other day and I said, you know, Devin's case, it's over. I'd like to show the community a little bit of what we've seen if I take off handles and identifiers and whatnot. He said, sure, go ahead. So this isn't, whoa, this is what we've seen in the 2 years since my son has been killed. They advertise for guns, Percocets, got the real deal. Google's the box on and Ritalin. If you haven't had perks in 72 hours, it'll get you stupid high. This is in Hastings. These are individuals in Hastings. And they've not stopped. So this year, we did things a little bit different. We tried to get involved with some of the politics. Section 230, that's a really big thing right now. And that's one that parents like myself, Soleil's parents, Brenda, we're all trying to get change because we want Snapchat to be able to be held accountable. We sat in a secret meeting with them last year, and Jennifer Stout, the VP of Global Communications of Snapchat, she said right out, we had no idea this was happening on our platform. Lies. And then she went on to say, well, it's not us posting it, it's the third-party content, we're not responsible. That is absolutely ridiculous. Any one of these businesses down here in Hastings, if they were operating this in their back rooms, they'd be shut down, they'd be held accountable. Our community would go crazy. So I'm asking from a mom, have that conversation with your kids because this is what I still see this. This is still here. We've lost too many young lives. Natalia, 19. Soleil, 17. Jose, 20. Tyler, 19. And it just goes on and on. Michelle Cahill, she was 50. It's a multi-generational killer. And if you sit and think this can't happen to my kid, not my kid, I was that mom. We had the drug talk with our kids, but we didn't know fentanyl was here. We didn't know what it was. We didn't know the signs of an overdose, anything about Narcan. Now we know, albeit too late, but it's not too late for our community members. And that's why we push so hard, and I'm just so grateful to Mary and Jane for getting everybody brought together to do this so that we can save lives. I shared with them when I reached out to them a year ago. Devin died in the safest place, which should have been the safest place, his home. The person he was with, for whatever reason, don't care, he's got to live with it, locked his bedroom door and left, didn't say a word. That haunts us, because we didn't know that the signs of an overdose was snoring. We just thought he was sleeping. This can easily happen to anybody else in this community. But if you think with the stigma, you know, we've heard it all for all of our families. Your kid was a junkie, your kid made a choice. My son did not choose to take fentanyl. He chose wrong decision to take what he believed was a Percocet. Don't condone it. We'd be having a completely different conversation if he were still alive. I wish he were still alive. But these are still our community members. These are still brothers, sons, daughters, grandmothers, aunts. They're still human. So I'm going to say to you in closing, if you're even thinking about picking up or trying a drug, DEA Administrator Ann Milgram just said, and I quote, "There's no more dangerous place in the United States of America for a young person age 18 to 45 than social media." They don't care. They're not going to change it. They're not. So if you're thinking about, I want to try it, I'm bored, I'm getting peer pressured. If you're getting peer pressured, those are not friends. walk away. My son lost his life over a $30 pill. To those people, his life was only worth $30. His life, the value I put on his life is priceless. If you're someone who's struggling with substance use, get help. We purposely set out to find as many resources as we could because we thought, where would we go? Who would we turn to? So the United Way, they have a whole website, did the showcase on Dead on Arrival, the short and long version of that. I encourage you to watch that with your kids, have a conversation with your kids. If you're somebody in recovery, speak up, share your stories, inspire hope to these people who are struggling. To the families of loss, my heart breaks with you and for you, always will. But don't stop sharing your story because people say your kid's dead, that's your mother's dead, your whatever, they're gone, it's over. It's not over. Our losses are what is pushing this epidemic out of the darkness and into the light. Did you want me to do the...
Oh, read it and then... Thank you, Bridget. And I think I speak for Mary when I say we would not be here if it were not for Bridget. She is a mighty, mighty person and is creating change, and that's powerful. We want to close this evening with lighting of candles. So I've got a couple of our team members over here going to pass out candles and also a little pledge. I'm going to give a minute or two here for that to spread. Those of you who go to church on Christmas Eve, this will be a little familiar. It's like passing the light during that service. We're going to have the candles passed out to everybody, and then we're going to have a lighter, and the light will kind of work from the outside toward the center. Please hold your lit candle upright. Touch the unlit candle to the top of the flame. We'll read our pledge of awareness, if Bridget would like to do that. And when we leave, you can you blow out your candle. There's a silver container over on one table, and then we have the green container that's going around. You can leave your candle in that as well. So we'll go ahead and get the candles passed out. I have to recognize we have two other summer camp members here tonight. One is Emma, who's helping pass out candles. Emma was part of the team that created some of our marketing materials. You can see those over on our table. She did the chart that compares overdose deaths to car crashes. The number one risk to teens right now is dying from an overdose, not from car crashes. Overdoses are greater than car crashes, suicides, and gun deaths combined. That's where we are with that. So I recognize Emma, and then I also want to recognize Walter, who's here at the front. He's filming tonight for Hastings Television. So he's been working with them, and he is their videographer for this evening. So these are 3 of 10 students that have just done a terrific job. So we're getting the candles to everybody. And then Alexa, if you want to grab a couple of the lighters and start to light, we'll work our way from the outside toward the center. Going to read just a little piece we put together. Tonight we wanted to provide both a time to remember those who have died from overdoses and fentanyl poisonings and their families and friends who are still grieving their deep losses. Tonight is also about education and to provide an opportunity for you to learn more about the dangers of illicit fentanyl, along with tools to spread awareness and resources to get help. We are in this together. Coming here tonight, you are showing yourself as part of a community of people who care about each other, who care about the young people in and near Hastings. To further support each other and our community, we invite you to read along and take the pledge of awareness that we've created. Members of the team are passing out candles and copies of the pledge and passing out a flame of hope as well. As the light of the candles spread, so does our commitment to support each other.
right, I invite you to all read along with me. In recognition of International Overdose Awareness Day, IOAD, I pledge to continue learning about fentanyl, overdoses, and poisonings, to share information, encourage people to ask questions and to seek help, to be a stronger anchor to the young people around me, and to strengthen my own web of support and the webs of the young people in my world.
Look around and see the light. Every one of us, we can be a light in this community, and we can continue to spread awareness. There's a lot of parents out there that do not yet know that this is happening. So let's all take the time and do what we can to spread that information. Mary? So that's our closing this evening. Again, we thank you so much for being here tonight, for being part of the solution. My dad always liked to say, it's better to be part of the solution than part of the problem. And we are. This is part of the solution right here. So as you blow out your candles and leave, please feel free to visit the resource tables, talk to those who are here, talk to the speakers, talk to each other. And let's continue to build our community, one day, one person at a time. Thank you so much and have a good evening.